Welcome to Sports Live Media on YouTube. It's you guys, Sports Live, broadcasting live today, December 3rd, 2025. Today, we will have Season 1, Episode 5 of Hoops and Pucks and Wednesdays. Oh my. We'll discuss college basketball on the men and women's part of that. We will discuss NBA basketball, NBA G League, and NHL hockey. And the Wednesday part of that is all games being discussed today will take place today, Wednesday, December 3rd, at some point. We'll start off with the women's college basketball stuff. And before we get into the schedule on who's going to play and my picks for who will win, let's go over the Associated Press top 25 poll for the women's college basketball. Number 1, UConn. Number 2, Texas. Number 3, South Carolina. Number 4, UCLA. Number 5, LSU. Number 6, Michigan. Number 7, Maryland. Number 8, TCU. Number 9, Oklahoma. Number 10, Iowa State. Number 11, North Carolina. Number 12, Iowa. Number 13, Ole Miss. Number 14, Baylor. Number 15, Vanderbilt. Number 16, USC. Number 17, Kentucky. Number 18, Notre Dame. Number 19, Tennessee. Number 20, Michigan State. Number 21, Washington. Number 22, Louisville. Number 23, Ohio State. Number 24, Oklahoma State. Number 25 is West Virginia. Now, let's look at the women's games. What I'll do is I'll tell you who's playing and my thoughts on who will win the games. Let's go through these. You have Army versus St. Peter's. I believe St. Peter's will defeat Army. You have South Carolina Upstate versus Western Carolina. I believe South Carolina Upstate wins that one. You have Troy versus Longwood. Longwood defeats Troy. You have UNC Wilmington versus West Georgia. I believe West Georgia will beat UNC Wilmington. You have Robert Morris versus Mercyhurst. I believe Robert Morris will beat Mercyhurst. You have Oakland City versus Ball State. I believe Oakland City wins over Ball State. You have Heidelberg versus Akron. Akron wins over Heidelberg. You have the University of Albany versus Sacred Heart. I believe Sacred Heart beats the University of Albany. You have Miami in Ohio versus Cincinnati. And I believe Cincinnati will defeat Miami of Ohio. You have William and Mary versus Wake Forest. And I believe William and Mary will defeat Wake Forest. You have South Carolina State versus UNC Asheville. I believe South Carolina State beats UNC Asheville. You have Lindenwood versus Drake, and I believe Lindenwood will defeat Drake. You have Northern Arizona versus St. Thomas in Minnesota, and I think St. Thomas in Minnesota defeats Northern Arizona. You have Southern Illinois versus UAB. I believe UAB will defeat Southern Illinois. You have Boston College versus Quinnipiac. Boston College defeats Quinnipiac. You have Binghamton versus San Diego. I believe Binghamton will lose to San Diego. You have Oral Roberts versus Idaho. I believe Oral Roberts will defeat Idaho. You have Massachusetts versus Northeastern. I believe Massachusetts will beat Northeastern. You have Washington State versus BYU. I believe Washington State beats BYU. We have Bryant versus Yale. I believe Bryant beats Yale. You have Kentucky versus Miami in Florida. I believe Kentucky will defeat Miami in Florida. You have Virginia versus Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt will defeat Virginia. You have NJITT versus Monmouth, and I believe Monmouth wins that game over NJITT. You have Auburn versus Syracuse. I believe Syracuse beats Auburn. You have Georgia versus Florida State. I believe that Georgia will defeat or Georgia will lose, I'm sorry, to Florida State. You have Loyola Chicago versus Richmond. Richmond defeats Loyola Chicago. You have Dayton versus George Washington, and I believe George Washington defeats Dayton. You have Morehead State playing Murray State, and I believe Morehead State will defeat Murray State. You have American University versus Drexel. I believe Drexel will win on that game. And I didn't make any predictions. Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. Okay. So let's go on. We have Western Michigan versus Indiana. I have Western Michigan defeating Indiana. You have Johnson and Wales in North Carolina playing Winthrop. I have Johnson and Wales defeating Winthrop. You have James Madison versus East Carolina. I have James Madison winning over East Carolina. You have Cornell versus Lehigh. I have Cornell defeating Lehigh. You have Marshall versus Coppin State. I believe Marshall wins that one over Coppin State. You have Niagara versus Buffalo. I believe Niagara will defeat Buffalo. You have Brown versus Stonehill. I believe Brown will win over Stonehill. You have VCU over LaSalle. I believe LaSalle wins over VCU. You have Sam Houston versus Rice. I believe Rice defeats Sam Houston. Purdue Fort Wayne will play IU Indianapolis, and I believe IU Indianapolis beats Purdue Fort Wayne. You have Central Michigan versus Michigan. I believe Michigan defeats Central Michigan. You have Mount St. Mary's versus Maryland, and I believe Maryland will defeat Mount St. Mary's. You have NC State versus Oklahoma. I think NC State will defeat Oklahoma. You have Oklahoma State versus North Texas. I believe Oklahoma State will defeat North Texas. You have Illinois State versus Northern Iowa. I believe Illinois State will defeat Northern Iowa. You have Rhode Island versus St. John's. I believe Rhode Island will defeat St. John's. You have Fordham versus George Mason. I believe Fordham will defeat George Mason. You have DeQuesne versus Davidson. I believe DeQuesne wins that one over Davidson. You have Northern Illinois versus Indiana State. I believe Northern Illinois will lose to Indiana State. You have Presbyterian versus Furman. I believe Furman will defeat Presbyterian. You have UMass Lowell versus Iona, and I believe Iona will defeat UMass of Lowell. You have Holy Cross versus Harvard, and I believe Harvard will defeat Holy Cross. You have Wichita State versus Texas Tech, and I believe Texas Tech will win over Wichita State. You have Mercer versus Columbus, Mercer versus Campbell, and I believe Campbell will defeat Mercer. You have Stetson versus UCF, and I believe UCF defeats Stetson. You have Evansville versus Purdue, and I believe Purdue defeats Evansville. You have Oakland versus Wright State. You have Oakland versus State, and I believe Oakland wins that one. You have Columbia versus Manhattan, and I believe Columbia beats Manhattan. You have Kentucky State versus Bowling Green, and I believe Kentucky State wins that one. You have Lafayette versus Farley Dickinson, and I believe Lafayette will defeat Farley Dickinson. You have Georgia Tech versus Texas A&M, and I believe Georgia Tech will defeat Texas A&M. You have Incarnate Word versus TCU, and I believe TCU will defeat the Incarnate Word in basketball. You have Harris-Stowe State versus Southern Missouri State, sorry. And I think Harris-Stowe State will defeat Southeast Missouri State. You have UNLV versus the UTSA. I believe UNLV will defeat UTSA. You have Belmont versus Middle Tennessee. I believe Belmont defeats Middle Tennessee. You have Florida Atlantic versus Western Kentucky, and I believe Western Kentucky defeats Florida Atlantic. You have Southeast Louisiana versus Baylor, and I believe Baylor will defeat Southeast Louisiana. You have St. Bonaventure versus St. Louis, and I believe St. Louis will defeat St. Bonaventure. Kansas City versus Northern California. I believe Northern California wins that game. You have Montana State versus North Dakota State, and I believe North Dakota State will defeat Montana State. You have Montana versus North Dakota, and I believe North Dakota defeats Montana. You have Florida Gulf Coast versus Arkansas State. I believe Arkansas State will defeat Florida Gulf Coast. You have Southern versus Arizona, and I believe Arizona will defeat Southern. You have Kansas versus Northwestern. I believe Kansas will defeat Northwestern. You have Bradley versus Nebraska, and I believe Nebraska will defeat Bradley. You have Weber State versus South Dakota State, and I believe Weber State will defeat South Dakota State. You have Omaha versus Idaho State. I believe Omaha will defeat Idaho State. You have California Baptist versus Pepperdine, and I believe Pepperdine wins over California Baptist. All right, so you have Texas A&M Corpus Christi versus UTEP, and I believe UTEP will defeat Texas A&M and Corpus Christi. You have Oregon State versus Oregon, and I believe Oregon will defeat Oregon State. You have DePaul. I believe that's right. No, you have Denver versus Eastern Washington, and I believe Denver defeats Eastern Washington. You have Tennessee defeating Stanford, and you have South Dakota versus Portland State, and I have South Dakota winning that one over Portland State. To answer your question in regard to what you asked earlier, I don't like the fact that you used that and stuff. You need to please be respectful. It is helpful. No sense in that nonsense. So, anyway, now we will look at the men's basketball schedule. There are several games in the men's basketball world today. And so, before going over the men's games, let's look at the AP poll top 25 for the men's college basketball. You have number 1, Purdue, number 2, Arizona, number 3, Michigan, number 4, Duke, number 5, UConn, number 6, Louisville, number 7, Michigan State, number 8, Houston, number 9, BYU, number 10, Iowa State, number 11, Gonzaga, number 12, Alabama, number 13, Tennessee, number 14, Illinois, number 15, Florida, number 16, North Carolina, number 17, Vanderbilt, number 18, Kentucky, number 19, Texas Tech, number 20, Auburn, number 21, Kansas, number 22, Indiana, number 23, St. John's, number 24, USC, and number 25, Arkansas. Can y'all hear me out there in YouTube land? All right, now we have, for the men's games, we'll start with this one. I don't have as many on those, but yeah. We have Arkansas Pine Bluff versus UIC. I believe UIC defeats Arkansas Pine Bluff. You have Tennessee Tech versus Lipscomb. I have Tennessee Tech winning that one. You have Northeastern versus Holy Cross. I believe Holy Cross will defeat Northeastern. You have Vermont State Johnson versus Boston University. I believe Boston University will defeat Vermont State and Johnson. You have Virginia Lynchburg versus Appalachian State, commonly called App State. I believe Virginia and Lynchburg will defeat App State. You have Wright State versus Youngstown State, and I believe Wright State will defeat Youngstown State. You have Indiana versus Minnesota. I believe Indiana wins that one over Minnesota. You have Western Michigan versus Southern Indiana. I believe Western Michigan defeats Southern Indiana. You have North Carolina Central versus James Madison, and I believe James Madison wins that one over North Carolina Central. You have Louisiana versus Lamar, and I believe Lamar defeats Louisiana. You have Drexel versus American University, and I believe Drexel will defeat American University. You have Carroll versus Towson, and I believe it's Cornell. Sorry. I believe Cornell will win that one over Towson. You have New Hampshire versus Dartmouth. I believe New Hampshire defeats Dartmouth. You have Coastal Carolina versus Coastal Carolina. You have Pfeffer versus Longwood, and I believe Longwood defeats Pfeffer. You have Southern Illinois versus High Point, and I believe High Point defeats Southern Illinois. You have Presbyterian versus Wofford, and I believe Wofford will defeat Presbyterian. You have Louisiana Tech versus Georgia Southern. I believe Louisiana Tech defeats Georgia Southern. You have Southern Miss versus Radford, and I believe Southern Miss will defeat Radford. You have Furman versus Elon, and I believe Furman will defeat Elon. You have Marshall versus UNC Wilmington. I believe Marshall will win that one over UNC Wilmington. You have Gardner Webb versus Queens University, and I believe Queens University will defeat Gardner Webb. Florida Gulf Coast versus Florida International. I have Florida International winning over Florida Gulf Coast. You have Midway University versus Bellarmine, and I have Bellarmine defeating Midway University. You have Austin Peay versus Kent State. I believe Kent State will defeat Austin Peay. You have Maine versus the University of Ohio. The University of Ohio will defeat Maine. You have Loyola, Maryland versus Hampton. Loyola, Maryland will defeat Hampton. You have Navy versus Delaware State, and I believe Navy will defeat Delaware State. You have Coppin State versus West Virginia, and I believe Coppin State will defeat West Virginia. You have Hofstra versus Columbia, and I believe Hofstra will defeat Columbia. You have Cleveland State versus Northern Kentucky, and I believe Cleveland State defeats Northern Kentucky. You have Purdue Fort Wayne that will play Oakland. Purdue Fort Wayne defeats Oakland. You have IU Indianapolis versus Detroit Mercy, and I think that IU Indianapolis will defeat Detroit Mercy. Alrighty, now let's go over some more men's basketball games, men's college basketball games at that. All right, we have Bloomsburg versus, who is that? St. Bonaventure, and I have St. Bonaventure beating Bloomsburg. You have Mount St. Mary's defeating Sacred Heart. You have Central Connecticut versus Seton Hall, and I have Seton Hall defeating Central Connecticut. You have Harvard playing Massachusetts, and I believe Massachusetts defeats Harvard. You have Penn State in Shenago versus St. Francis. I believe St. Francis will defeat Penn State Shenago. You have Bucknell versus Akron, and I have Akron defeating Bucknell. You have UT Rio Grande Valley versus Stephen F. Austin. Stephen F. Austin will defeat UT Rio Grande Valley. You have Louisville versus Arkansas. I believe Louisville will defeat Arkansas. You have Clemson versus Alabama. I have Alabama defeating Clemson. LSU will be playing Boston College. I have LSU defeating Boston College. You have Mississippi Valley State versus UL Monroe, and I have Mississippi Valley State defeating UL Monroe. You have Little Rock defeating Central Arkansas. You have Brandeis versus Yale. Brandeis will defeat Yale. You have Richmond versus Belmont. I believe Richmond wins that one over Belmont. You have Alcorn State versus Iowa State, and I believe Iowa State will defeat Alcorn State. I know I marked both, but I was kind of undecided on that one. You have Tennessee State versus Alabama A&M. I believe Tennessee State defeats Alabama A&M. You have Howard Payne versus Tarleton State. I believe Howard Payne defeats Tarleton State. You have Northern Colorado versus Omaha. I believe Omaha will defeat Northern Colorado. You have South Dakota State versus Northern Arizona, and I believe Northern Arizona will defeat South Dakota State. You have Princeton versus Monmouth. I believe Monmouth defeats Princeton. You have Idaho State versus Kansas City. I believe Idaho State loses to Kansas City. You have UMBC versus Georgetown. I believe Georgetown will defeat UMBC. You have Ball State versus Evansville, and I believe Evansville will defeat Ball State. You have Eastern Kentucky versus Illinois State, and I think Illinois State will defeat Eastern Kentucky. You have Portland State versus South Dakota, and I believe South Dakota will defeat Portland State. You have New Orleans versus Memphis. I believe New Orleans defeats Memphis. You have California Baptist versus BYU. I have BYU beating California Baptist. You have North Carolina State, or commonly called NC State, versus Montana, and I have NC State or North Carolina State defeating Montana. You have Oral Roberts versus Weber State. I believe Oral Roberts will defeat Weber State. You have Texas State versus Rice. I believe Texas State will defeat Rice. You have St. Thomas in Minnesota versus Montana State, and I believe St. Thomas in Minnesota will defeat Montana State. Northwestern will defeat Wisconsin. You have North Dakota versus Idaho, and I believe North Dakota will defeat Idaho. You have Eastern Washington versus Denver, and I believe Eastern Washington will defeat Denver. You have Pacific versus Air Force. I believe Pacific will defeat Air Force. Okay, NC State is a different thing. So NC State's a different college from that other one. So you have NC State versus Auburn, and I believe NC State defeats Auburn. You have SMU versus Vanderbilt, and I believe Vanderbilt will defeat SMU. You have Virginia versus Texas, and I believe Texas will defeat Virginia. You have Mississippi State versus Georgia Tech, and I believe Georgia Tech will defeat Mississippi State. You have Vermont versus Oregon State, and I believe Oregon State will defeat Vermont. You have Puget Sound versus Seattle U. I have Seattle U beating Puget Sound. You have Utah Tech versus Santa Clara, and I believe Santa Clara will win over Utah Tech. Excuse me. You have Utah Valley versus San Diego State, and I believe San Diego State will defeat Utah Valley. You have North Alabama versus San Francisco, and I believe San Francisco will defeat North Alabama. You have UCLA versus Washington, and I have UCLA to defeat Washington. Now that that's out of the way, let's go over the AP poll one more time for both the women and for the men. This time we'll start with the men. Number 1 is Purdue. Number 2 is Arizona. Number 3 is Michigan. Number 4 is Duke. Number 5 is UConn. Number 6 is Louisville. Number 7 is Michigan State. Number 8 is Houston. Number 9 is BYU. Number 10, Iowa State. Number 11, Gonzaga. Number 12, Alabama. Number 13, Tennessee. Number 14, Illinois. Number 15, Florida. Number 16, North Carolina. Number 17, Vanderbilt. Number 18, Kentucky. Number 19, Texas Tech. Number 20, Auburn. Number 21, Kansas. Number 22, Indiana. 23 is St. John's, number 24 is UConn, and number 25 is Arkansas. Now, for the women, in the AP poll top 25, you have number 1, UConn, number 2, Texas, number 3, South Carolina, number 4, UCLA, number 5, LSU, number 6, Michigan, number 7, Maryland, number 8, TCU, number 9, Oklahoma, number 10, Iowa State, number 11, North Carolina, number 12, Iowa, number 13, Ole Miss, number 14, Baylor, number 15, Vanderbilt, number 16, USC, number 17, Kentucky, number 18, Notre Dame, number 19, Tennessee, number 20, Michigan State, number 21, Washington, number 22, Louisville, number 23, Ohio State, number 24, Oklahoma State, and number 25 is West Virginia. Now, we are going to go over my picks and thoughts regarding the NBA G League. Those games are scheduled for today as well. In the G League today, we have Wisconsin versus Motor City. We have Westchester versus College Park. We have Memphis versus Birmingham. We have Noblesville versus Cleveland. We have Capital City versus the Raptors. And we have Santa Cruz versus Valley. So I have Wisconsin defeating Motor City. I have College Park defeating Westchester. I have Memphis defeating Birmingham. I have Cleveland defeating Noblesville. I have the Raptors defeating Capital City, and I have Santa Cruz defeating Valley. All right, now that we got that done, let's go over the NBA basketball schedule with my picks today. So, in the NBA, we have Portland versus Cleveland. We have Denver versus Indiana. San Antonio versus Orlando, uh, Los Angeles Clippers versus Atlanta, Charlotte versus New York Knicks, Brooklyn versus Chicago, Sacramento versus Houston, Detroit versus Milwaukee, Miami versus Dallas. So my picks for those games are as follows. I have Portland defeating Cleveland. I have Indiana defeating Denver. I have San Antonio defeating Orlando. I have Atlanta defeating the Los Angeles Clippers. I have Charlotte defeating the New York Knicks. I have Chicago defeating Brooklyn. I have Sacramento defeating Houston. Milwaukee defeats Detroit. And Miami defeats Dallas. All right. Now, there's not very many on the National Hockey League, but we will go over the National Hockey League games for today, December 3rd. You have Dallas versus New Jersey. You have Winnipeg versus Montreal. You have Buffalo versus Philadelphia. You have Utah versus Anaheim. And you have Washington versus San Jose. So my picks for the NHL hockey, you have New Jersey. I have New Jersey defeating Dallas. I have Montreal defeating Winnipeg. I have Buffalo defeating Philadelphia. I have Utah defeating Anaheim. And I have San Jose defeating Washington. So there you have it. My picks for today for the hoops and pucks and Wednesdays for college men's basketball, college women's basketball, NBA G League, regular NBA, and NHL hockey. We will do these every Wednesday around this time since most of the games start fairly early. And the fact that it's called Wednesdays Oh My's, all games being discussed are on Wednesdays. So that's all I have regarding that. Just a couple of announcements. One, Saturday, weather permitting, I mentioned that I would mention about what's going on Saturday, but I will be broadcasting live the Huntsville, Alabama Christmas Parade. That parade is supposed to take place on Saturday, and the start time is approximately noon. It may be a little earlier or it may be a little later, depending on weather and or other circumstances. So I will be broadcasting the Huntsville Christmas Parade live on location somewhere on the parade route. And during that live stream on Saturday, I will go over details as soon as I get those available, since they're still making minor tweaks to that right now. Also, we just finished the college football regular season, and then we're also waiting on the conference championships to take place. We will have another live stream, most likely on Tuesday, regarding the college football bowl games, the Army-Navy game, and playoff games through the quarterfinals. That's at least a plan for that. On the NFL side of things, it's still in the regular season, and so we will have the NFL thing probably with the college football live stream and just combine that. Any other additional live streams, they will be announced at the time when I know that they will be happening. Sometimes I know sometimes you wish that I could give you a direct time, and sometimes I'm not able to do that, and I do apologize for that, but I'm doing the best I can with that. What else do I need to let you know? There will be other sports action videos throughout the rest of the week, so be on the lookout for those. That's all I have, really, so thank you for taking the time to tune into this broadcast today here on Sports Law Media. If you will, please hit the like button, please hit the subscribe button, and please hit the notification bell so you can be made aware of when I'm doing these live streams, when I have sports action videos, when I have sports education videos, again, when I broadcast live, or when I have breaking news in the sports world. If you wish to subscribe to the channel, it is greatly appreciated that you do. There are two ways you can do so. One, you can go to www.youtube.com, the slash symbol, the at symbol, SPORTSLOV. Or you can go on the YouTube search tab and type in Sports Law Media as two words, SPORTSLOV as the first word, media as the second word, MEDIA. You'll know it's me because I have Sports Law Media burned into a basketball as my avatar. I'm also on Twitter X, and my handle there is at BobAmin16. That is the at symbol, BOBAMIN 16. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding what we've covered today? Things that are actually appropriate? If not, I do thank you very much for tuning in today. Sports Live Media signing out. I hope you all have a wonderful